Listening, fill in the blanks.
Let's start.
The classic example of classical conditioning is a dog's ability to associate the sound of a bell, something that originally has no meaning to the dog, with the presentation of food, something that has a lot of meaning to the dog. A few moments later, dogs are able to learn the association between bell and food, and will solve it immediately after hearing the bell once this connection has been made. Years of learning research have led to the creation of a highly precise learning theory that can be used to understand and predict how and under what circumstances most any animal will learn, including human beings, and even to help people figure out how to change their behaviors.
Role models are a popular notion for guiding child development, but in recent years, very interesting research has been done on learning by examples in other animals. If the subject of animal learning is taught very much in terms of classical or operant conditioning, it places too much emphasis on how we allow animals to learn and not enough on how they are equipped to learn. To teach a course of mine, I have been dipping profitably into a very interesting and accessible compilation of papers on social learning in mammals, including chimps and human children, edited by Hayes and Galef, 1996.
The pulped beans then rest, covered in pure rainwater to ferment overnight. The next day the wet beans are hand-distributed upon the drying floor to be sun-dried. This drying process takes from 1 to 2 weeks depending on the amount of sunny days available. To make sure they dry evenly, the beans need to be raked many times during this drying time. 2 weeks later the sun-dried beans, now called parchment, are scooped up, bagged and taken to be milled. Huge milling machines then remove the parchment and silver skin, which renders a green bean suitable for roasting. The green beans are roasted according to the customer's specifications, and, after cooling, the beans are then packaged and mailed to customers.
An audio tape recording does not solve all the linguist's problems, however. Speech is often unclear and ambiguous. Where possible, therefore, the recording has to be supplemented by the observer's written comments on the nonverbal behavior of the participants, and about the context in general. A facial expression, for example, can dramatically alter the meaning of what is said. Video recordings avoid these problems to a large extent, but even they have limitations. The camera cannot be everywhere, and transcriptions always benefit from any additional commentary provided by an observer.
Optimists have something else to be cheerful about. In general, they are more robust. For example, a study of 660 volunteers by the Yale University psychologist Dr. Becca Levy found that thinking positively adds an average of 7 years to your life. Other American research claims to have identified a physical mechanism behind this. A Harvard Medical School study of 670 men found that the optimists have significantly better lung function. The lead author, Dr. Rosalind Wright, believes that attitude somehow strengthens the immune system. Preliminary studies on heart patients suggest that, by changing a person's outlook, you can improve their mortality risk, she says.
Diabetes is the name given to a group of different conditions in which there is too much glucose in the blood. Here's what happens. The body needs glucose as its main source of fuel or energy. The body makes glucose from foods containing carbohydrates such as vegetables containing carbohydrate, like potatoes or corn, and cereal foods, like bread, pasta, and rice, as well as fruit and milk. Glucose is carried around the body in the blood and the glucose level is called glycemia. Glycemia, blood sugar levels, in humans and animals, must be neither too high nor too low, but just right. The glucose running around in the bloodstream now has to get out of the blood and into the body tissues. This is where insulin enters the story.
Governments require sellers of new medicines to demonstrate their safety and effectiveness.
The accepted gold standard of evidence is a randomized controlled trial, in which a new drug is compared with the best existing therapy, or with a placebo, if no treatment is available. Patients are assigned to one arm or the other of such a study at random, ensuring that the only difference between the two groups is the new treatment. The best studies also ensure that neither patient nor physician knows which patient is allocated to which therapy. Drug trials must also include enough patients to make it unlikely that chance alone may determine the result.
Having your blood pressure and cholesterol outside recommended ranges can also lead to problems like heart attack and stroke, and in fact 2 out of 3 people with diabetes eventually die of these complications. Young adults age 18-44 who get type 2 diabetes are 14 times more likely to suffer a heart attack and are up to 30 times more likely to have a stroke than their peers without diabetes. Young women account for almost all the increase in heart attack risk, while young men are twice as likely to suffer a stroke as young women. This means that huge numbers of people are going to get heart disease, heart attacks and strokes years, sometimes even decades, before they should.
An example of random allocation is a study carried out in 1927 of how to persuade people to vote in elections. And randomized trials in social work were begun in the 1930s and 1940s, but enthusiasm later waned. This loss of interest can be attributed, at least in part, to the fact that early experiments produced little evidence of positive outcomes. Others suggest that much of the opposition to experimental evaluation stems from a common philosophical malaise among social scientists, who doubt the validity of the natural sciences and therefore reject the potential of knowledge derived from controlled experiments. A more pragmatic factor limiting the growth of evidence-based education and social services may be limitations on the funds available for research.
The sense of touch has sometimes been described as weak too, but this view is probably mistaken. Trainers of captive dolphins and small whales often remark on their animals' responsiveness to being touched or rubbed, and both captive and free-ranging cetacean individuals of all species, particularly adults and calves, or members of the same subgroup, appear to make frequent contact. This contact may help to maintain order within a group, and stroking or touching are part of the courtship ritual in most species. The area around the blowhole is also particularly sensitive, and captive animals often object strongly to being touched there.
Like, share, subscribe the channel and press the bell icon for further updates.